Hello, ladies. Jackie Schmaltz here, certified Billings ovulation method instructor, and I am ready for another Q&A session with you today. So today's question is, what is your recommended way of tracking ovulation? I've heard of using a device, kind of pee on the stick thing, Apple Watch, checking cervical mucus, or using an app. What is my recommendation? Well, let's break down each of these into some pros and cons and what my recommendations are, starting with the fertility monitors, because these are becoming super popular. And quite honestly, I hate them. They've become popular because they're kind of objective. A machine literally tells you yes or no, high fertility, low fertility, peak fertility. In today's world, unfortunately, we tend to trust a machine more than ourselves. So many years ago, I chose not to use them. Back in the day when I was picking a method to use personally for myself, I chose not to use them because they were expensive. They're still expensive. They're also becoming harder and harder to source supplies with today's supply chain issues that we have. So there's a definite con to that. I find them gross, and I'm not saying this to be shaming or bashing the method whatsoever. The question was what my recommendations are, so I'm just speaking to my own personal opinion and why I choose not to use this method. And the idea of just peeing in a cup or on a stick each day and having these things in my garbage is just not appealing to me. Experience-wise, I've worked with several clients that have come to me with a history of using these methods and having failures with them, which, I mean, that can happen with any method, I suppose, okay? But I tend to see it a lot with this method. Now, with my Billings training, I see holes in this method. The science just isn't there for me. I don't trust any method that uses algorithms or counting days or past cycle history data. I just don't. I also find it weird that the method works in 10-day increments and not day by day, because our fertility signs change day to day, not week by week. So I just don't understand the method. I don't like the materials involved, and it's just not the one for me. Okay. Now, if you love your method and you're using a fertility monitor, hey girl, nothing wrong with that. You do you. Okay. Again, I was just asked what my recommendations are, so I'm giving them. Apple Watch. Now, the Apple Watch is not a method, it's a device. It's not even approved for fertility tracking. Now, this is assuming that you're talking about the one that reads body temp. So that's what I'm addressing right now. Now, I have a Fitbit version, and the cycle tracker in this is a predictor. You want to stay away from any fertility tracking apps that use algorithms to predict ovulation. And spoiler alert, if they're anything but simple data entry storage, they're predictors and they're garbage. These are fine to use to predict your period for scheduling things like vacations and stuff around, but do not use them for tracking ovulation. They will get it wrong. I find that the fertile windows don't match, even with my regular cycles. Mine in particular only allows for 1 day after its predicted ovulation day. And so on the occasion when my peak does line up with the app's predicted ovulation day, I would still need 3 days of abstinence to avoid pregnancy with certainty. So that right there, that is enough to turn me off of all predictive apps. Do not use their fertility window guidelines, right? But even that's not my biggest beef with these apps. My biggest beef with them is that they are a predictive machine trying to predict my body, which can be unpredictable. My experience with apps seems to be about a 2-year time span. That's a pretty common pattern for unplanned pregnancy stories. So your app's going to catch up to you in about 2 years if you're going to just solely rely on it. That's just long enough for you to get comfortable with trusting them. And then boom, your body's going to decide to ovulate early. And now you've got a pregnancy you didn't see coming. And I've actually worked with a couple who had come to me to learn Billings after because they were trying to get pregnant for 2 years. And they've been to the doctors. There's no known reason why they shouldn't be conceiving. They've gone through fertility testing and such. They were using an app to predict her fertile window. And even the doctor told them to, ovulate. Ovulation happens around day 14, so have intercourse around that time. And they just could not get pregnant. Well, after learning the Billings method with me, she realized that the reason she wasn't able to get pregnant was simply because they had missed their fertile window. She was not ovulating on day 14 of her 28-day cycle, and she was missing her window of opportunity. Once she learned how to track her body's real signs of ovulation and figure out what her real actual window each cycle was, they became pregnant within just 2 cycles of trying. All right, so you can use all the fancy gadgets you like, just don't rely on them to predict your times of fertility and infertility. Even the Daisy app, which boasts FDA approval as birth control, it's just a marketing play, you guys. Go ahead, use the thermometer with it and the data entry story part of it if you like. It's quite expensive of a thermometer and data storage gadget, but hey, to each their own. But just do not rely on it giving you green light days and red light days. These are not going to be reliable. Same with the Temp Drop app. The Temp Drop device, it has its own app. I can totally see the value in using a wearable thermometer. I love my Fitbit for that. It's a really good backup to my Billings chart. It's comforting for me to mark a peak on my chart and then a few days later look at my watch and be able to see the temp shift. Okay, I can see the value in that. But the app itself in a Temp Drop changes your temperature's recordings and alters its predicted fertile window after the fact. And I don't like that. I think that is sketchy. My temperature is my temperature. It should not change a week later, or however it works, a few days later. I also see women tend to rely on the temps alone when using the Temp Drop. So when the method itself, it was never meant to be temps only. It's meant to be used in conjunction with mucus, because temps only can't accurately be used to identify ovulation. You can have a temp spike without ovulation. And I personally find that it makes a difference if my husband is in bed with me. And your sleep patterns also alter your temp. So me having 3 kids, getting uninterrupted sleep rarely happens. There are some methods that say, oh, you only need 3 hours of sleep. I tried temping after I learned the ins and outs of tracking your fertility, and it made a difference as to what time I temped, what my sleep patterns were, whether or not my husband was in bed with me, or even if I stayed in someplace else that wasn't my house. That all affected it. And to me, that is just too unreliable to rely on alone. Okay, so again, temping alone is not reliable. Now, tracking mucus is the most reliable biomarker. Even if you don't think that you have any mucus, you may not have noticeable visible mucus, but I promise you there is mucus present. Now, Billings tracks sensation over visual observation. Okay, so that's one of the main differences. They call it a mucus only method, but it's actually a sensation-based method. So Billings, in my opinion, is the best mucus method available. It's the most reliable biomarker to track. And Billings is the original method of all fertility methods aside of rhythm. Okay, every other method was formed as a branch off of Billings, and they all stem from the science, the original science that came from the founders of Billings, John and Evelyn Billings. And it's the method that has the most research, and this research is still going on today. It's got the largest international research institute in the world. Now, as far as implementing, Billings is by far the simplest method to implement. It doesn't require any supplies or fancy gadgets. You literally need a pen and a paper, or a paper with a string with some beads on it, or something to mark what day you're on in your cycle. It doesn't require any weird measuring stretch or playing or manipulation with mucus. You don't have to even touch it. In any woman anywhere in the world with any type of cycle, regular or not, in any season of life, can use the method as long as she has a functioning cervix. So now sometimes women can gain confidence with Billings by tracking basal body temp as a secondary biomarker. As I said, I like to wear my Fitbit watch to track temp, but charting my Billings chart is my primary. It's just comforting to see if my Fitbit tracker body temp spike lines up with it. It doesn't most of the time, but it's nice to see when it does. Okay. And I also find that women who feel like they want to track their temperatures alongside learning Billings quickly give up the temping, because it either creates confusion for them, or they gain the confidence in their observations of mucus, and they just don't find that they need the hassle of temping every day. I mean, I don't know about you, but I like to hit snooze on my alarm clock several times. Having to set an alarm clock 5 minutes early to take my temperature in the morning is not appealing to me. Again, that's just me. If that's your thing, you do you. All right. So again, lots of debate triggers in this. I'd rather you just not. Everybody has their own opinions. And that's great for you. Go ahead, use what you want to use, as long as you know and understand the science behind what you're using and the risks and implications of those risks. And you are ready to accept the responsibility of those risks of whatever method you're using. By all means, you do you. I just would really prefer scientifically sound and simple to implement and cheap to use. Therefore, I like the Billings ovulation method. Now, I currently have 2 course opportunities available to learn the Billings ovulation method. I have a self-teach course that is an introductory lesson that breaks down the science and the history and the charting and the how-to of the method. And then I have a full-on one-on-one training with me. You basically hire me as your instructor for a full year of follow-up until you are autonomous with tracking your fertility. I've got the link to both of those courses in the description of this video. I hope you found this helpful, and let me know if you have any questions. With that, you guys have a great day.